when I was a young man and Ronald Reagan became president, the national debt was $989 billion. Similar to the drama that we've seen recently in the press when the debt ceiling was inevitably raised to $14 trillion. Back then, the controversy was whether the Congress should raise it to $1 trillion. Well, I could also remember in the mid-'80s when the rhetoric was that Ronald Reagan had, under his presidency, the national debt had increased, had tripled. It increased 3 times. And it was the something like the cumulative effect, the cumulative, I can't even talk straight. The combined, it exceeded the combined debt of all presidencies combined. Now, Ronald Reagan, as you recall, was the president under whom this whole idea of supply-side economics arose. And at the same time, it was also this peace through strength policy. Build all sorts of new tactical nuclear weapon delivery systems, new warheads and things like that, and that this would bring the Soviet Union to its knees. I don't know exactly why anybody wanted to do that, particularly in light of the United Nations. The whole idea there being that all the nations of the world combined together would work in conjunction to alleviate the burdens of war spending so that the independent nations and states could concentrate on cultural improvement, the general welfare, and so on and so forth. In other words, spending would be domestic rather than on war. So you had two principles during this time. You had the idea that if you cut the taxes of millionaires and other rich people, that it would have the Great Gatsby effect. They would do all sorts of phenomenal things, build Brooklyn bridges and Golden Gate bridges and railroads and steel corporations and Andrew Carnegie and all that. Well, it's kind of interesting when you contrast the sorts of American heroes that you had when Andrew Carnegie was alive and the sort of American heroes you have now. I come to think of Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, people like that, as compared to Donald Trump, Lee Iacocca. I can't even think of anybody because I don't follow that sort of thing. You probably know more about it than I do. But it's a whole different quality and type of person. And I don't see that that's changed at all from anything that supply-side economics has done. But what I have seen is that I've seen the debt rise, the national debt rise from $1 trillion to $14 trillion within my lifetime. And I can also recall that the only Democratic president within that time was Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton actually had a surplus in deficits. There was still a debt. There was still a national debt, except he didn't contribute to it. So regardless of what you read about in the papers, the debt, the national debt, the increase 14 times, by common sense and fact, is entirely attributable to Republicans. And if you stop and think about it, the largest proportion of that is undoubtedly attributable to George Bush. There was probably more wars under the Bush presidency than any other president in modern times, since World War II at least. I also know that the cost of a Tomahawk cruise missile is $1.5 million. And I read online that when the United States commenced their offensive war against Libya, the first day of attack, they fired, I think it was 102 Tomahawk cruise missiles. So get your calculator out with your scientific notation and just figure it out. One day alone. And the funny thing about that is that none of these people that complain about welfare or Mexicans or whatever the present Ku Klux Klan shtick is all, you know, whatever they're saying, not a single person made any complaint about that, and it didn't do a goddamn thing. What did it do? You might as well have taken that $1.2 million times 102 and just put it in a big pile and burned it. Because that's essentially all that you do with weaponry. Now someone will be quick to quip, but it creates jobs, jobs, jobs. You know, like Baker III said. Somebody asked him why we're going to war in Iraq when Pappy Bush was president. And he was possibly the first honest Secretary of State since I don't even know when, and simply said one word: jobs. But the fact of the matter is, it's just common sense when you stop and think about it. If you build something and blow it up, it has no more use. It's like one of those one-act deals. You can only do it once. But if you build something like the Margarettsville Popacton Reservoir in upstate New York here that supplies water for New York City, that's used constantly over and over again. Or bridges or highways. Even though I promote, or I wish I could promote, public transportation as opposed to everyone having 1 or 2 or 3 cars. These things nonetheless have a purpose. They have a public purpose, a public need. And if you look back and you examine all these various feats by these great Gatsby types, they usually involve something like that. The main one is probably railroads and steel for the rails. But nowadays, we don't have anything like that because the United States of America, almost as a solo act, decided to not have anything to do with the United Nations, not to follow those principles, to just be a loose cannon of the world. And now it's to the point where it's got so many nuclear weapons and whatnot that it just goes around and just creates wars. It doesn't even have to ask. Congress just sits by, you know, they bitch about it a little bit, but, you know. So that's where all of this money has gone to. It's gone to the uneconomic investment in weaponry, which is what the United Nations was established to address and find a solution to, provide a solution to. How many years ago now? 60, 70 years? And it's just been entirely ignored. In fact, you have young people, they have long hair, they're supposed to look like 60s hippies or something, that are states' rights Confederates that are complaining about the United Nations. It's all an Illuminati conspiracy, the one world government, you know. I don't know if these people realize that they're working for Nazi fascism directly, or whether they actually believe this shit. But it is shit. And the last thing I'm going to say about this is that I was trying to put a blog together regarding the contributions of the United States of America to humanity. And I started out with the Ku Klux Klan, and then I got up to Anthony Comstock, W.D. Griffith, Birth of a Nation, which was enormously popular around the time Jimmy Cracker was running for president against the liberals and was elected. I think every public broadcasting station in America aired it at least once. You know, and D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation is all about the Ku Klux Klan that saved white Christian males from the Negras that took over the Senate. They were drinking alcohol in there, going after our white women and all. And when you put all these together in conjunction with what the white people have done with Tomahawk cruise missiles and Titan missiles and peace through strength and tax cuts to the very rich and famous and so on and so forth, and you go from $1 trillion to $14 trillion in debt, it only makes sense. Who are they going to blame it on?